Smoke from the wedding fire stung Luna Darkhollow's eyes before the first vow was spoken. It should have smelled of cedar and moon oil and sweet root, the old blessing blend for a Luna crowning. Instead, damp wood hissed under a hard wind, and the flames spat black like they were choking. Wolves packed the broken courtyard shoulder to shoulder, their fur cloaks brushing the cracked stones of the old keep, all of them watching her beneath her silver veil as if waiting for something to go wrong. At the center stood Torin Voss, future alpha of Darkhollow, her fated mate by scent and blood and every law that had ever ruled their people. He wore the ceremonial iron at his wrists and a wolf skull clasp at his throat, chin lifted, mouth set in the line he used when he wanted to look merciful. Luna tried to calm her shaking hands. Her wolf was a low, restless murmur in her chest, always there, never fully risen, never fully shifted. Not once in 23 winters. The High Elder raised his staff. Before witness of moon, bone, and fire, we bind the Alpha and Luna of... Stop. Torin's voice cracked across the courtyard like a whip. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The Elder stared. Luna's pulse kicked hard. Torin turned to face her, not touching her, not even close enough for her scent to settle against his. I reject this bond. The words slammed into her sternum. For a breath she heard nothing. No wind, no flame, no people. Then sound rushed back in jagged pieces. Someone gasping, someone laughing once and cutting it short. Torin, Luna whispered, throat dry. This is the right. If you have a grievance, we can speak in private. He barked a humorless laugh. Private? So you can cry and make me the villain? He pivoted to the crowd, voice rising. I will not chain Darkhollow's future to a weak-blood female who can't even call her wolf. Heat crawled up Luna's neck under the veil. You knew, she said too quietly. You always knew. And I hoped you'd improve, he snapped. Years of moon rites, blood tonics, spirit fasting, and still nothing. No shift, no alpha heirs worth naming. He stepped closer at last, only to sneer down at her. I won't breed weakness into a pack already crippled by war. Someone in the crowd muttered, curse marked, and another answered, should have seen it. Luna looked for one friendly face and found none. Her aunt wouldn't meet her eyes. The girls she'd trained with stared at the stones. One of Torin's cousins grinned openly. The elder's expression tightened with fear, not compassion. Alpha Heir Torin. This is irregular and dangerous. A public rejection before the fire can... Then let it burn clean. Torin reached up, grabbed Luna's veil at the crown, and yanked it free. Hairpins tore loose with it, scraping her scalp. Before she could move, he flung the veil into the flames. Silver thread curled black. The moon sigil stitched by her mother caught, shriveled, vanished. There, Torin said. Disgrace marked. Let no one say I hid what she is. Luna took one stumbling step back, hand at her bare throat. Her wolf retreated so sharply she almost doubled over with the emptiness. By dawn, the elders made it law. They assembled in the judgment circle while first light bled over Darkhollow's ruined walls, where old scorch marks from the war still climbed the stone. Luna stood barefoot on frost, wrists bound with rawhide. Torin did not attend. He didn't need to. The council had already chosen its sacrifice. High Elder Moran read from a brittle parchment, voice sonorous and dead. Luna Darkhollow, daughter of Sarah Line, is found unfit, unstable, and spiritually deficient. By Old Covenant, she bears blame for continued misfortune on our land and for the unrest born after the wildfire campaign. Luna jerked her head up. The campaign happened when I was 12. Marin didn't blink. The land remembers blood. Your line opened the South Pass. Our dead followed. That was Hadrian Raiders in Darkhollow colors, she said, desperation sharpening her words. You all know that. We had testimony. Silence, another elder hissed. You stand accused. I stand convenient, Luna spat. For that, they branded her. Two enforcers held her shoulders while the iron exile sigil, an open circle split by a downward slash, came out of the brazier white hot. She smelled her own skin burn before the pain landed. When it did, it was total. Blinding. A scream she bit in half, because she would not give them the sound. Meron lowered his staff. By mark and witness, she is banished from Dark Hollow borders forever. She may not claim den, hunt, vote, mate bond, or shelter under pack law. Aid to her is treason. An older woman Luna had once called grandmother lifted her chin and said clearly, "Leave her to the carrion." No one objected. They cut her bindings and marched her to the boundary stones at spear point. Frost crunched beneath their boots. Her feet were numb and bleeding by the time they reached the wolfhead marker that separated Dark Hollow land from the dead border strip. One guard shoved a sack at her. Stale crust, half a water skin, nothing else. You have till sunset. If we sent you inside the line after that, we take the head. Another leaned close enough for his breath to hit her face. Try not to die where pups can see. Then they turned their backs and walked home. Luna stood alone between boundary stones, throat throbbing around the fresh brand, watching smoke rise from the place that had been hers since birth and now refused even her shadow. She lasted half a day before the breaking point came. She should have kept walking north along the ravine, away from everything. Instead, hunger and shock dragged her toward an old root cellar near the east orchards where, as a child, she and her brother hid winter apples. It sat just outside the inner den fields but still inside the wider borderline, a technicality, she told herself. 1 hour, 1 apple. Then gone. The cellar door had collapsed. She crawled through splintered planks, coughing dust, and found mold, rat droppings, and 3 shriveled apples no bigger than her palm. She ate 2 in frantic bites, juice sour and thin on her tongue, and tucked the third into her cloak like treasure. When she crawled back out, 4 young wolves blocked the slope, former trainees. Boys who once asked her to judge their sparring. 2 had hunting paint on their faces. 1 held a rope. Look what crawled back, said Kesh, the tallest. He pointed at her throat and made a gagging sound. Rot marked. Luna rose slowly, swallowing the panic spike in her gut. I'm leaving. Council posted a bounty at noon. Another said, alive to the hunters gets us 2 silver each. Dead gets 1, Kesh said, cheaper to carry ears. She turned to run and slammed straight into a broader chest. A bounty hunter in council leathers gripped her upper arm hard enough to bruise. Easy, he murmured. No need to tear yourself. Let go. He smiled without warmth. You heard the decree. Exiles are unclaimed. You belong to whoever catches you first. Rage hit so clean it steadied her. Luna stomped his instep, drove her elbow into his throat, and ripped free as he gagged. Someone grabbed her cloak. Fabric tore with a harsh ripping sound. She left half the hem in his fist and sprinted downslope through dead grass and stunted pines. Shouts exploded behind her. After her? Don't mark the face. Council wants proof. She ran, vaulted a fallen log, slid in mud, caught, vaulted a fallen log, slid in mud, caught herself on both hands, and kept going because stopping meant rope, iron, maybe a public cage in the square, while Torin watched from the alpha seat and called it justice. The tree line thinned toward the bomb-scarred flats no pack claimed. Wind knifed through her torn cloak. At the last boundary marker, a toppled wolf head split in half by old fire, she hesitated. Beyond that lay wild borderland and, farther still, territory patrolled by the Alpha King's forces, the same Crown Army that marched through Dark Hollow 6 years ago, leaving villages ash-gray and fields cratered. Luna still remembered the smoke columns, the screaming horses, her mother pressing her flat under cellar stones while roofs fell. Go there and she might live under enemy boots. Stay, and she would not live at all. Behind her came the baying howl of release hounds. Luna spat blood from a bitten lip, clutched the last shriveled apple, and hurled herself over the broken marker into the no man's strip. Rain found her at dusk, cold and relentless, needling through every seam. By midnight, she had lost the trail twice and nearly stepped into an old shell pit full of black water. Her boots sucked in mud, one sole flapped loose. Her brand had swollen into a hot ring of pain that made swallowing feel like sandpaper. She tucked herself beneath a blasted fir and dozed in jagged bursts, waking to every crack and rustle. Once she saw eyeshine in the dark and held her breath until it passed. Once she dreamed Torin throwing her veil into fire and woke tasting smoke that wasn't there. At dawn, she staggered onto higher ground and saw them. Canvas tents the color of storm clouds, wagons ringed in iron, cook fires kept low against the wind. Soldiers moved in disciplined lines between stacked timber and stone crates, stamped with the crown sigil. A wolf wreathed in flame. Alpha King Wildfire's people. Her stomach dropped. She crouched behind thorn scrub, too weak to flee, too proud to beg. If they recognized her mark, they might sell her back to Darkhollow for alliance points. If they didn't, maybe she could steal food and disappear east. She watched a patrol return through the rain. 5 wolves in travel armor, mud to their knees. The one in front was taller, broad-shouldered, with a scar cutting from his left brow to his jaw, as if someone had tried to split his face and failed. No command ornaments, no polished rank plates. Just a plain soldier's coat, patched at the sleeve, and eyes that missed nothing. He stopped mid-step and looked straight at the scrub where she hid. Luna rose because crouching felt too much like surrender. She made it 3 steps into the open before dizziness tilted the world. The camp blurred, gray on gray. She swayed. The scarred soldier moved fast, catching her by the elbow before she hit the mud. His grip was firm but careful, as if he expected her to bite. "Easy," he said. Low voice, rough-edged. "You're burning up." She yanked her arm back and nearly fell anyway. "Don't touch me." He released her immediately, palms open. "All right." His gaze dropped to the brand on her throat. Something shuddered in his expression. Not disgust, not pity. Calculation, maybe. Then he shrugged off his own dry cloak and held it out without stepping closer. "I'm called Raven," he said. "Low-rank logistics. We're not hunting exiles." Luna let out a raw laugh. "No? Your king hunted whole territories." Rain ran off his lashes. "My king ended a war started by liars and raiders." "Tell that to Darkhollow Graves." At the name, his attention sharpened. "You're from Darkhollow?" She said nothing. Raven glanced toward the wagons loaded with cut stone and seed crates, then back to her torn cloak, mud-caked boots, and the old map callus on her right palm where scouts held compass pins. "We march there in 2 days," he said. "Rebuild crews. Roads first, then wells." Her breath went thin. "Rebuild?" "By crown order." He hesitated, then added, "I need someone who knows the old paths and collapsed tunnels. Someone local." Luna stared at him, rain dripping from her hair to the raw brand at her throat, fury and hunger and impossible hope twisting together so hard she could barely stand. Raven extended the cloak again, waiting for her choice. "Guide us," he said, "or walk away. But choose before the storm gets worse." Luna looked at the offered cloak, then at the camp beyond him. Crown wagons, crown steel, crown fire. "Food first," she said, "then terms." Something like approval flickered across Raven's scarred face. "Good. Means you're thinking." "I'm always thinking." "Then think while chewing." He jerked his chin toward the nearest tent. No cages, no chains. You walk when you want. You leave when you want. In return, you guide us through dark hollow routes that aren't mined, flooded, or likely to collapse. Her laugh came out thin. That list is short. Short is still better than blind. Rain ran down the back of her neck. Her knees trembled so badly she hated him for noticing. He did not reach for her again, just stepped aside and held the cloak where she could take it without touching him. Luna snatched it, swung it around her shoulders, and said, "If anyone tries to drag me back over that border, I'll cut their throat." Raven nodded once. "Then I'll make sure no one's stupid enough to try." The camp smelled of wet canvas, broth, and iron oil. Wolves glanced up as she passed, then away when Raven met their eyes. She caught the word exile once, soft as breath, but nobody blocked her path. He put a wooden bowl in her hands and pointed at an overturned crate beside a cook fire. "Sit." It was not a command. More like a suggestion spoken by someone used to being obeyed anyway. She sat because her legs were about to fold. The broth was thin, mostly root and bone, but hot enough to hurt. She drank too fast, coughed, and cursed. Raven pretended not to notice. He stood with his back half-turned, giving her space while still screening her from the busiest lane through camp. When she finished, he handed her half a heel of bread and a water skin. "Medic says your throat mark's infected." "I didn't ask a medic. I asked for you." Luna tensed. "Why?" "Because dead guides are useless." The words were practical. The way he watched her swallow wasn't. She wiped her mouth on her sleeve. "You said 2 days to march." "Changed my mind." He glanced at the darkening sky. "Main crews follow tomorrow noon. We scout tonight, just us and one mule. If you're lying about routes, fewer people die." "And if I'm not?" "Then Dark Hollow gets wells before winter?" She hated that part of her wanted to believe him. "Fine." They left before full dark, cutting south along a ridge where old shell craters held rainwater like black mirrors. Raven walked beside the mule, not ahead of her, and never once tried to steer her by the elbow. When she veered, he matched. When she stopped to listen, he went silent. Lightning flickered over broken pines. Luna pointed toward a narrow defile between two blasted outcrops. "Old supply path through there. Looks stable, but the left wall shears after hard rain." Raven made a mark on a waxed map board strapped to his forearm. His handwriting was surprisingly neat for hands that looked built for war. "Left wall shears," noted. "You always this obedient?" He huffed. "Only when someone knows more than me." They reached the Centerlands near midnight. Dark Hollow's heart had once held a moon shrine, white stone arches, carved wolf totems, spring pool blessed by elders. Now it was a cratered skeleton open to the storm. One arch still stood, cracked down the middle like a split rib. Statues lay toppled, faces melted by old fire. Luna climbed the broken steps on instinct, boots slipping on moss-slick stone. This used to be sacred ground. Raven stayed below for a moment, gaze tracking the perimeter as if measuring ambush lines. Sacred ground still needs drainage. She almost smiled. The world tilted instead. Pain lanced from her brand down her chest. She took one more step, and her ankle rolled on loose rubble. The sky swung sideways. She pitched forward with a bitten-off curse. Raven moved fast. His hand clamped around her wrist first, then slid to her throat to catch her weight. Fingers spread across the pulse point just above the exile sigil. Everything exploded. Heat hit her veins like molten silver poured straight into her blood. Not fever, not pain. A violent, ecstatic rush that punched a cry out of her and drove her knees weak. Her wolf, silent for years, surged up with a raw, startled howl inside her skull. Scent crashed over her in layers: rain, stone dust, iron, and him. Wildfire and pine resin and something that felt like home finding her in the dark. Raven went rigid. His pupils blew wide, swallowing Iris. A sharp breath tore out of him like he'd been stabbed. Gold flashed under his eyes, wolf-light, bright and stunned. For one locked heartbeat, the ruined shrine vanished. There was only his hand on her mark, her pulse hammering against his palm, and a thread snapping taut between them so hard it almost hurt. Mate. The word was not thought so much as impact. No. Impossible. Not him. Not a crown wolf. Not while Torin's rejection still burned like acid in her bones. Not while dark hollow graves lay under wildfire banners. Raven's hand jerked back as if scorched. Then, shockingly, he dropped to one knee. Instinctive. Immediate. Head bowed toward her, jaw clenched, like a wolf before a sovereign. He seemed to realize it a second later and snapped upright with a muttered curse. Damn broken stones. Luna stared at him, chest heaving. Did you just... twisted my leg? His voice was rougher now. Too rough. Nothing. Liar. Probably. Lightning split the sky above the cracked arch. Thunder rolled through the crater. Her skin still sang where he'd touched her. The exile brand, always a wound, now pulsed like a live coal linked to his heartbeat. Her wolf paced frantically inside, awake, 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 scraping at her ribs to get closer. Fear slammed into desire and made both sharper. If this is some soldier trick, she started. Raven took a single step back, palms open. I didn't do that. He sounded shaken, not manipulative, not triumphant. Terrified, maybe, in the way of someone who has found exactly what he wanted in exactly the wrong place. Luna pressed her fist to her throat, as if she could physically hold the bond down. I don't want this. His eyes met hers, gold still ghosting at the edges. I know. Wind whipped rain through the ruined arch, plastering her hair to her face. Neither of them moved. Neither looked away. Finally, Raven said, low, we can pretend it didn't happen until we decide what to do. Her laugh was brittle. That's not how fate works. No, he said, but it's how choice works. Choice. The word hit somewhere deep and aching. She bent, snatched up the map marker she'd dropped, and shoved it into his hand harder than necessary. The west tunnel mouth is buried. If you send wagons through, they'll drown. Raven curled his fingers around the marker. I'll reroute. Good. They finished surveying in near silence. Every accidental brush of sleeve sparked. Every shared breath felt dangerous. By the time they reached an old watchtower on the north ridge, half collapsed, roof mostly gone, walls still standing enough to break the wind, Luna's nerves were scraped raw. Raven tethered the mule in the lee of fallen stone and kicked open the warped tower door. We shelter here till dawn. She nodded and stepped inside first, because she refused to look like she was following. Rain hammered the broken tower all night. Raven built a small, smokeless fire in a corner pit and gave her the drier patch of floor without comment. He set down one blanket, then another arm's length away for himself. Distance, deliberate and visible. Luna told herself she wouldn't sleep. She woke with a strangled sound trapped behind her teeth, hands clawing at air. Wedding fire, veil burning, Torin's voice, weak blood, echoing and echoing while elders held her down for the iron. Luna! She jolted upright, breath ragged. The tower was dark except for ember glow. Rain hissed through gaps in stone. Raven sat near the fire with her torn cloak spread across his knee. Big, scarred hands moved awkwardly through needle and gut thread, pulling uneven stitches through the ripped hem. Beside him, her boots stood upright near the coals, steam ghosting from the leather as he turned them every few minutes so they'd dry evenly. He glanced up when she scrambled back against the wall. Nightmare? She wiped sweat from her mouth. Don't. Her voice shook. She hated it. Don't come closer. I won't. He kept his seat, set the needle down where she could see it. You're safe. No one says that unless they're about to prove otherwise. Something old and tired moved through his expression. Fair. Silence stretched, filled by rain and distant thunder. Luna's gaze dropped to her cloak. You don't sew like a quartermaster. I sew like a soldier who got tired of trench foot. Despite herself, she looked at her boots, then back at him. Those are mine. Yes. You could have taken them and left. Yes. You didn't. No. The simple answers unsettled her more than charm would have. Raven picked up the cloak again. Your left seam was catching every branch. You'd lose the whole thing by tomorrow. She dragged the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Why do you care? He threaded the needle, squinting in the low light. Because pain makes people make bad choices. I need you walking, thinking, and angry at me for rational reasons. A snort escaped her before she could stop it. He looked up, one corner of his mouth twitching like he was surprised to find humor still existed. Then he sobered. Also because no one should wake cold if it can be helped. Luna stared at him, at the care in clumsy stitches, at the way he kept his body angled away from her despite the bond humming hot under her skin. He spoke without looking directly at her. If the bond pressure gets too much, say so. I can sleep outside. In this rain? I've slept in worse. She believed him. When she didn't answer, he set her repaired cloak on a stone within her reach and slid the warmed boots over with the toe of his own, never crossing the invisible line between them. You choose every step, he said quietly. With me. With the root. With all of it. The words landed hard. No elder had said anything like that when they branded her. Torin had never asked before touching, before deciding, before taking. Luna reached for the boots. The leather was warm from his hands. Thank you, she said, the words rough as gravel. Raven dipped his head once, as if accepting an order. Sleep if you can. We move at first light. This time, when she lay down, she kept one hand on the repaired hem like proof it was real. By late morning, they reached Bracken Market, a sprawl of mud lanes and patched awnings at the edge of neutral ground where traders, scavengers, and scouts swapped goods under uneasy truces. Crown Supply mules needed salt and lamp oil. Luna needed a replacement strap for her boot. Raven handed her a short list and 2 coins. Stay where I can see you. She bristled. I'm not your recruit. No, you're a magnet for trouble. Same thing. He almost smiled. Fair. Still true. They moved through the crowd side by side, close enough to pass for companions, not close enough to touch. The bond tugged anyway. Luna stopped at a cobbler's stall to haggle over a leather strap. The cobbler's eyes dropped to her throat and widened at the exile mark peeking above her collar. Recognition flashed. Not the cobbler's. Someone behind her. Luna Darkhollow? She turned. Kesh stood 3 stalls down, older by weeks and cruelty. Jaw bruised yellow from some recent fight. 2 men flanked him in council bounty leathers, wolf head badges dark with rain. More hunters lingered near the ale tent, watching. Kesh's grin was vicious. Told you she'd crawl somewhere with food. The nearest bounty hunter took a step forward. By council writ, Exile Luna Darkhollow is wanted for unlawful re-entry and theft of pack stores. I was dragged over my own border at spear point, she snapped. Try a better lie. He ignored her, eyes fixed on Raven. Stand aside, soldier. Exiles are unclaimed meat. Raven moved before she could. One smooth step put him between Luna and the hunters, shoulder broad, stance loose and lethal. Say that again, he said. The hunter sneered and swung without warning. His fist cracked into Raven's jaw with a sound like splitting wood. Raven's head snapped sideways, then returned to center. He did not stagger, did not strike back. Blood beaded at his lip. Luna's wolf lunged inside her, teeth bared. The second hunter went for her arm. Raven caught the man's wrist mid-grab and twisted until bone popped. The hunter screamed and dropped to his knees. Chaos rippled through the lane, vendors backing away, wolves shoving for space, someone shouting for market wardens. Kesh lunged in from the left with a short baton. Raven took the hit across his ribs, grunted, and still kept his body between Luna and every raised hand. "Enough," he said. It wasn't loud. It was worse. Power rolled off that single word like a pressure wave. Ancient, absolute alpha command stripped bare of rank insignia and pretense. Wolves up and down the lane froze mid-motion. One trader actually dropped to a knee before looking horrified at himself. The hunters blanched. Kesh's baton hand shook. Raven's eyes burned molten gold now, impossible to miss. "She is under royal military protection," he said, voice low and lethal. "Touch her again, and you answer to the Crown Tribunal for interference with Reconstruction Order and assault on active command." Active command. Luna's pulse thudded in her ears. Low-rank logistics, my ass. The first hunter swallowed blood and pride. "You're making an enemy of Dark Hollow Council." Raven wiped his split lip with his thumb, gaze never leaving him. "Dark Hollow Council can file a petition." Kesh spat in the mud near Luna's boots. "Traitor bitch!" Luna stepped around Raven's shoulder before he could stop her and looked Kesh dead in the face. "I remember when you cried because your first hunt killed a doe instead of a buck. You shook for an hour." She let her eyes rake over him. "Now you sell women for silver. Don't pretend this is honor." Kesh flinched like she'd slapped him. Market wardens finally pushed through. Spear shafts horizontal. "Break it up! Neutral lane, no claims." Raven released the kneeling hunter's wrist with a contemptuous shove. The man scrambled back, cradling his arm. Kesh and the others retreated in a knot of curses, throwing promises over their shoulders about warrants and council justice. When they were gone, sound flooded back into Bracken Market all at once. Voices, carts, goats, rain on canvas. Raven turned to Luna. Blood still marked his mouth. "You hurt?" She shook her head, unable to stop staring at him. At the control it took not to slaughter them. At the way he absorbed blows meant for her like it was obvious. Like it cost him nothing to stand in front. "You took that punch on purpose," she said. "Yes." "Why?" His answer was immediate. "Because if I'd started with command, they'd run shouting questions we can't afford yet." Yet, the word hung between them, loaded. Luna handed the cobbler his coin with fingers that trembled only a little, took the new bootstrap, and walked back to Raven's side. This time, when their shoulders brushed in the crowded lane, she didn't move away. Raven bought lamp oil with blood still drying at the corner of his mouth. Luna watched him trade like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just bent a market lane to his will with one word. When he caught her looking, he passed her a strip of smoked meat and said only, "Eat while we walk." They left Bracken Market by the east track, mud sucking at their boots, mule plodding between them under sacks of salt and grain. Behind them, the market noise faded into rain and crows. Half a mile out, Raven whistled once. A lean gray wolf in scout leathers stepped from scrub as if she'd grown there. "Report to Captain Ivers," Raven told her. Voice, flat command now, no pretense. "Bracken neutral lane compromised. Dark Hollow bounty hunters are operating across boundary law. I want names and affiliations before dusk." The scout thumped fist to chest and vanished back into brush. Luna slowed. "Low-rank logistics?" Raven kept his eyes on the track. "I said I was called Raven. That part was true." That wasn't an answer. "No," he said. It wasn't. 2 ridges south. In a lodge built from black pine and stolen stone, Hadrian Silvermane snapped a wax seal with his thumb and read by firelight. He was beautiful in the polished way poison could be beautiful. Silver hair braided with bone beads, jaw smooth, rings on every other finger. His smile never touched his eyes. Across from him, Kesh knelt on a fur rug trying not to shake. Hadrian read the market report twice, then looked up. "You are certain?" Kesh swallowed. "Yes, my lord. Scar down the left side. Calls himself Raven. Took a punch and didn't flinch. Dropped command in neutral ground. Everyone felt it." Hadrian tapped the parchment against his knee, amused. "Our hidden king goes tramping through mud in a soldier's coat. How sentimental." At his right hand, Vexa, his scribe, thin as a blade, leaned in. "If it is truly wildfire incognito, this is opportunity." Hadrian's gaze sharpened. Not opportunity. Leverage. He stood and crossed to the war map table where colored pins marked pack borders like wounds. "Raven's strength is alliance. Break that, and the crown is just one throat." He plucked a black pin and set it over Darkhollow. "Step 1, he said. Letters. Old dates. Luna Darkhollow's hand inviting crown troops through the South Pass in exchange for being named Luna after occupation." Vexa nodded, already writing. "We have samples of her script from school ledgers stolen last winter." "Good. Make them convincing enough to hurt, sloppy enough to be discovered." Kesh frowned. "Discovered by who?" Hadrian smiled. "By exactly the wolves who need an enemy." He placed 3 red pins in an arc around Darkhollow. "Step 2. Take pups from border dens. Leave crown-issue rope fibers, crown boot prints, crown arrows. Return 1 body if necessary. Not enough for grief to end. Just enough for rage to begin." Kesh went pale. "Pups?" Hadrian's voice stayed mild. "War is arithmetic, boy. 1 dead child buys more fury than 100 dead soldiers." He turned back to the fire, eyes gone flint hard. "By the time Raven denies it, every pack mother will already have chosen who to hate. They will demand blood. Luna's preferably. His, eventually." Vexa hesitated. "And if she dies too soon, we lose bait." "Then don't kill her yet." Hadrian's smile returned, thin and cruel. "I want her alive long enough to watch him fall." Outside, thunder rolled. Inside, orders spread like oil. Hadrian was dangerous because he never needed to win by claws first. He won by making everyone else use theirs for him. By dusk, the main reconstruction crews reached Darkhollow's outer terraces. Wagons creaked over old scars in the road. Engineers drove stakes for new retaining walls. Healers set up triage tents where an abandoned tannery used to stand. Crown banners stayed furled by Raven's order, no extra provocation. Luna led teams around sinkholes and collapsed cellars, voice raw from shouting measurements into wind. Wolves who'd known her as a girl stared when she passed, eyes catching on her throat brand, then darting away. Some took her directions anyway. Survival outweighed prejudice when winter sat this close. Raven moved through the work lines like controlled weather, checking braces, redirecting crews, carrying timber when hands ran short. No one called him Sir in front of outsiders, but seasoned soldiers straightened when he came near. At the Old Southwell, a mason muttered just loud enough for Luna to hear. "Funny how she returns with crown steel behind her." Another answered, "Maybe she never left." The words slid under her ribs and stayed there. By the second day, rumors arrived faster than supply carts. A teamster swore he'd seen a letter with Luna's signature and a crown seal dated 6 years ago. A trader claimed Torrin Voss himself had proof she sold Darkhollow routes before the war. 3 laborers quit at noon, spitting near her boots as they passed. Raven assigned 2 guards to shadow her. She dismissed them. He sent them anyway, 10 paces back and under orders not to touch unless she asked. At sunset they found the first sabotage, bridge bolts filed half through on a crossing Luna had cleared that morning. If a loaded wagon had gone first, it would have dropped 30 feet into broken rock. Raven crouched at the damaged support, thumb tracing the shaved metal. Deliberate. Luna sniffed the beam, eyes narrowing. Rain and pine pitch, yes. Also a bitter oil she remembered from trap snares east of the border. Not ours, not Crown either. Silvermane? He asked. She nodded once. Hadrian's raiders use this on chain traps. Raven looked toward the dark tree line. He knows we're here. The bond between them had become a live wire by then, tightening whenever danger neared, easing when one of them laughed despite themselves. Luna still told herself she resented it. Her wolf didn't bother pretending. That night, a message hawk came in after moonrise. Raven read the strip, jaw hardening. What? Luna asked. 3 allied alphas delayed their envoys to our winter summit. He folded the message in half. No reason given. Because they heard something. Yes. About me. About us, he said. Pressure climbed from all sides. Suspicious villagers, whispered treason, sabotaged works, allies turning cautious. Every path Luna had opened now felt like a corridor with torches burning down at both ends. The rain finally broke on the 4th night. Moonlight spilled over the ruined shrine at Dark Hollow's center, turning cracked stone pale as bone. Most of camp slept. Hammers were silent. Even the mules had stopped shifting in their lines. Luna sat on a fallen arch block with a whetstone in hand, drawing it slowly down the edge of her knife. Shk, shk. Something steady to do while her mind ran in circles. Raven approached without armor, only a dark shirt open at the throat and his coat slung over one shoulder. He stopped a respectful distance away. Permission? He asked, nodding at the stone beside her. She gestured with the knife. You're learning. He sat. For a while they listened to crickets and distant water dripping into the old spirit pool. The bond hummed, calmer in the quiet. Luna kept her eyes on the blade. They're saying I invited the war. I know. Part of me thinks the letters won't matter. She swallowed. Then I remember the brand. Raven's mouth tightened. Packs like simple stories. Traitor. Savior. Monster. It saves them from harder truths. Which one are you? He gave a humorless breath of laughter. Depends who's writing. She turned the knife, checked the edge. You still haven't told me who you really are. No. He looked out over the shattered shrine. Because once I do, you lose the option of not knowing. I already lost that option in Bracken. Silence. Then quietly. I commanded the Eastern Wing during the Wildfire campaign, he said. Luna's hand stilled. I wasn't king then, he continued. My predecessor sent us to break Hadrian's supply lines. We were told Dark Hollow had already evacuated. We were lied to. His throat moved once. By the time we realized civilians were still in the valley, the southern fires were out of control. I pulled who I could. Not enough. Luna stared at him, breath thin. He met her eyes. Hating me for that would be reasonable. I do hate you for parts of it, she whispered. I know. And She looked away, furious at the tremor in her voice. I want you anyway, which feels like betrayal of everyone I buried. Raven didn't reach for her, didn't crowd. Wanting isn't betrayal. Choosing harm would be. Her laugh cracked. You keep talking about choice like it's real. It is with me. His voice was rough but steady. If you tell me to walk away from this bond, I will. I'll still protect the territory. I'll still keep my word. But I'll go. The moon edged over his scar, silvering the old wound. He looked nothing like Torin in that moment. No performance, no entitlement. Just a wolf holding himself on a leash she controlled. Luna set the knife down and held out her hand, palm up. Raven looked at it, then at her. Just my hand, she said. Nothing else. He placed his hand over hers, calloused warmth, fingers careful. The bond flared, not the violent shock from the shrine, but a deep tide rolling in. Her wolf pressed close, not frantic now, just present. Luna exhaled shakily. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I, he said. We can learn ugly and slow. She leaned her shoulder lightly against his for 3 heartbeats, then 4. When she finally pulled back, some of the iron around her chest had gone soft. The horn blast hit before dawn. 3 sharp notes. Emergency call. Luna was on her feet before the echo died, knife in hand, boots half-laced. Outside, camp erupted in motion, soldiers grabbing spears, runners shouting sector numbers, engineers stumbling from tents. Raven came out of command canvas buckling his bracers. North Nursery Convoy, he snapped to his captains. 2 wagons missing. Escort dead. Luna's stomach dropped. Nursery. Dark Hollow pups being relocated from floodline dens to stone shelters. His eyes found hers. 16 children. They ran. The convoy route cut through Alder Marsh and Old Orchard terraces. They found the first body at a creek bend, throat torn, crown tabard soaked black. 10 paces farther, another guard lay face down with a crown arrow through his spine. Raven crouched, sniffed, and went still. Arrowhead's ours. Fletching isn't. Luna scanned the mud. Too many tracks, layered on purpose. But beneath them, there. Narrow boot with inward heel wear. Silvermane raid pattern. Staged, she said. Hadrian. A scream rose from uphill. They sprinted to the terrace and stopped hard. 2 nursery wagons burned in a stone yard below, flames chewing canvas hoops. Dark Hollow mothers knelt in the mud, clawing at ash with bare hands while militia wolves held them back. Beside the gate lay 3 small blankets, empty except for soot and 1 charred toy rabbit. Not all the pups were there. Most were gone. On the wall above the burning wagons, someone had nailed a parchment with a bone spike. Raven ripped it down and handed it to Luna. Her vision tunneled. The script was hers, or close enough to make no difference in a crowd. Dated 6 years prior. Addressed to Commander Wildfire. It detailed hidden passes into Dark Hollow and ended with, "Deliver me Luna seat after occupation, and the south gate will remain unbarred." At the bottom, a forged version of her family mark. No, she breathed. A roar rolled through the yard as wolves saw the page in Raven's hand. Traitor! She sold us. Crown Butcher! More horns answered from distant ridges. Pack calls, not military. One by one, banners appeared on the horizon. Greyfen, Redtooth, Ashmarsh. Armed wolves, running hard toward Dark Hollow Center. Raven's second-in-command skidded up, panting. Message from Outer Scouts. Silvermane raiders hit 2 border villages at the same time. Left crown tokens on every body. They took more children. Hadrian hadn't made 1 wound. He'd made a map of them. Militia wolves surged toward Luna, eyes wild with grief. Her 2 shadow guards stepped in front of her, spears crossed. Not enough. Raven moved to her side, voice like steel. Back. Some obeyed, most didn't. From the tower above, a council herald unfurled black cloth and shouted to the yard. By emergency writ, all Reconstruction forces stand accused pending conclave judgment. Surrender command and the exile Luna Dark Hollow for immediate binding. Binding meant chains. Chains meant trial theater with sentence already chosen. Around them, the ring of armed wolves tightened. Raven's hand found Luna's at her side, brief and fierce. Your call, he said under the rising noise. We fight out now, or we hold and face it. Another mother screamed her child's name into the smoke. Luna looked at the forged letter shaking in her grip, at the burning wagons, at wolves who would kill the wrong enemy by sunrise if she chose wrong. The circle closed to spear length. The spear ring tightened until the steel tips hovered a handspan from Luna's ribs. Smoke from the nursery wagons rolled low across the yard. Mothers sobbed into their palms. Wolves she'd grown up with bared their teeth at her, as if grief had rewritten her face into something monstrous. Raven's fingers pressed once against hers. Now or never. Luna heard herself say, clear and carrying, "We hold." Raven turned his head toward her, jaw flexing. "Luna, if we run," she said, loud enough for the ring to hear. "Every pup taken tonight becomes proof of their lie. Chain me if you must. I will face Conclave." A beat of stunned silence. Then the council herald shouted from the wall, "By witness of gathered packs, the accused submits." Militia surged forward. Raven moved with lethal calm, stepping between her and the roughest hands. "No strikes," he said. "No one touches her throat." "Not your terms, soldier?" spat one guard. Raven's eyes flashed molten gold. "Try me." They used iron anyway, wrists first, then a length around her waist. When one enforcer reached for the brand at her throat, Luna snapped, "Touch it and lose the hand." He believed her enough to settle for a chain collar that sat lower, heavy and cold over her collarbones. They bound Raven too, performative restraints looped around forearms thick enough to break them. He did not test them. Not yet. By sunset, every major pack had sent wolves to the emergency conclave at Dark Hollow's Broken Keep. Torches ringed the old judgment circle where she had once been branded. The same cracked stones. The same elder's platform. Only now banners from half the region snapped in the wind. Greyfen ash, Redtooth crimson, Ashmarsh green-black, and Silvermane silver thread gleaming like frost. Hadrian stood near the front in polished leathers, expression carved into noble outrage. Torrin Voss stood 2 steps behind High Elder Marin, chin up, as if this was his rightful court. Luna was forced to her knees in the center with chain links pooling around her boots. Raven remained 10 paces away under guard, blood dried at his lip, face unreadable. Marin lifted a parchment. Conclave called under blood emergency, charges, treason, conspiracy with crown forces, and complicity in child abduction. A howl of anger rolled through the crowd. Maron shook the page dramatically. Recovered correspondence, dated before the wildfire campaign, in Luna Dark Hollow's hand. He read each forged line with priestly cadence. "South Pass unbarred. Deliver me Lunaseat." He held up the false family mark. Mothers cried out. A Redtooth beta shouted, "Hang her now!" Another voice. "And the crown cur beside her." Torrin stepped forward and projected sorrow. "I took no joy in rejecting her, but Dark Hollow has suffered her weakness long enough." Luna laughed once, sharp and ugly. "You found your spine now?" Torrin's lip curled. "You sold us." "You sold me for 2 silver and applause," she shot back. Marin pounded his staff. "Silence! Under conclave emergency law, accused traitor may be executed at moonrise." 2 guards hauled Luna upright by her chains. The yard roared approval and blood hunger. Raven moved then, one hard jerk that made his restraint scream against metal rings. 3 guards lunged to pin him. His voice cut through everything, low and terrible. "Luna, say the word." She knew what he meant. Break them, tear through the ring, vanish into the border dark while civil war lit behind them. He could do it. She could follow. She also knew what the story would become by dawn. She lifted her chin toward Marin and shouted, "I invoke trial of echoes." The noise faltered. Marin went white. Torrin blinked. Even Hadrian's smile twitched. "That right is outlawed," Marin snapped. "Outlawed by cowards after they started losing lies to memory," Luna said. "Conclave law predates your ban. Any accused under blood sentence may call land memory witness if the spirit well still stands." A Greyfen Alpha leaned to his neighbor. "Is that true?" An Ashmarsh matriarch answered grimly, "Old law, yes. Rarely survived." Maron slammed his staff again. "The trial shatters minds. We will not indulge theatrics." "Then declare before all packs that Dark Hollow elders fear truth from their own land," Luna said. Murmurs spread, cutting across banners. Hadrian spoke for the first time, smooth as polished bone. Let the poor thing drown in myths if she wishes. It changes nothing. Luna turned her head and met his eyes. Silver, cold, amused. Predator. She bared her teeth. If I return with Memory Stone and your face in it, Alpha Silvermane, I want conclave dual rights called on the spot. Hadrian smiled wider. If you return at all. The Ashmarsh matriarch struck her spear butt to stone. Conclave recognizes invocation. One by one, other alphas echoed. Recognized. Recognized. Moran could not outvote half the region. He hissed through his teeth and gestured toward the shrine path. Then descend. Alone. Raven stepped forward despite the guards. She doesn't go in chained. Law says accused remains bound, Torrin said quickly. Law also says no iron below the well mouth, Luna said, or the echoes break. A grudging scramble followed. Links unlocked from her wrists, replaced with a single loop at her waist and a trailing chain held by two enforcers to the lip of the shrine stairs. Ceremony to satisfy panic. Raven caught her gaze as they led her toward the shattered moon shrine. Come back, he said. She gave him the same answer he had once given her in rain and ruin. Choice. Then she descended. The spirit well lay under the shrine, down a spiral stair slick with moss and centuries of spilled offerings. The air cooled with each step, smelling of wet stone, old ash, and something metallic. Sweet that made her wolf pace. At the bottom, a circular chamber opened around a black pool. Moonlight from the cracked ceiling struck the water and vanished, as if the surface swallowed light whole. Luna stripped off her cloak, boots, knife, kept only the chain loop at her waist. At the rim she paused, touching the exile brand at her throat. Land remembers, she whispered. Show me. Then she stepped in. Cold, knife to bone. The pool seized her calves, hips, chest. By the time it closed over her shoulders, she was shaking so hard her teeth clicked. She sank to her knees in the center and ducked under. Darkness slammed shut. Sound disappeared. Then voices rushed in. Not words at first, just terror and thunder and fire. Images hit in fragments. Wolves running with torches. Banners altered in moonless haste. The South Pass Gate bar lifted by hands wearing Silvermane rings. Hadrian's lieutenant painting dark hollow sigils on stolen shields. Oil casks split along grain barns. Flames climbing too fast. Too hungry. Another image. Younger Raven in blackened armor, shouting orders to dig firebreak trenches, dragging a child from a collapsed shed, coughing blood and soot. Crown soldiers breaking fence lines to drive civilians toward the river, while arrows rained from wolves in Dark Hollow colors, who were not Dark Hollow. Luna's lungs burned. She should have surfaced. Couldn't. The memories gripped like claws. Then, Torrin's father in a back room with Hadrian's scribe Vexa, exchanging satchels and silence. Moran receiving testimony from a survivor who named Silvermane raiders, and feeding that testimony to the brazier. Luna tore upward, gasping, only to be dragged back by another surge. Her ears rang, heat flooded from her throat brand through her skull, blinding and white. Take one truth, the well seemed to say. Not all. Or break. She reached blindly, and her fingers struck something hard lodged in silt. Crystal, fist-sized, shot through with smoky light. Memory stone. She ripped it free and kicked for surface. When she burst into air, she screamed, raw, involuntary, as blood ran warm from both ears down her neck. She clutched the crystal to her chest and staggered to the stairs, half crawling, half falling as the chamber tilted. At the well mouth, enforcers recoiled at the blood on her face. She's gone mad, one whispered. Move, Luna snarled, and they did. She climbed into torchlight before the whole conclave, soaked and shaking, chain dragging from her waist like a dead snake. Wolves murmured, recoiled, stared. Moran raised his staff. The trial failed. Look at her. Luna lifted the crystal with both hands. Her voice came ragged but steady. Witness. She slammed the memory stone against the altar slab. It shattered in a burst of pale fire. Light arced overhead and spread like a skin across the night, becoming moving image above the conclave circle. No storyteller's embellishment, no scribbled claim. Land memory, vivid and merciless. Hadrian's wolves in false colors, the oil casks, the first barn torch. Ravines set to draft the fire deeper into Dark Hollow. Crown troops hauling civilians from smoke while arrows struck their backs. Moran burning testimony. Torrens line trading silence for future favor. The projection ended on Hadrian himself giving the order by moonlight. Let Dark Hollow and Wildfire blame each other. We own the ashes. Silence hit like a blow. Then the yard exploded. Greyfen wolves lunged toward Silvermane delegates. Redtooth shouted for blood. Mothers who had cursed Luna turned on Moran with feral screams. Torrens stumbled backward, face gone chalk white. Hadrian moved first. He ripped a bone-handled blade from his sleeve and vaulted the altar, aiming straight for Luna's throat. The blade tip gleamed green. Poison. Raven roared and broke his restraints, but Luna was already moving. She yanked the loose chain at her waist, pivoted, and whipped it around Hadrian's knife wrist. Metal bit. Locked. She dropped her weight and twisted. His arm snapped downward. The poisoned blade skidded across stone. Hadrian hit one knee with a snarl, wrist trapped, shoulder overextended. He bared his teeth inches from her face. You were supposed to be the broken one, Luna. She tightened the chain until he hissed. Until I chose what to do with the ruin. Raven arrived in the next heartbeat, boot stamping Hadrian's forearm, hand closing over the Alpha's throat just long enough to pin him flat. Guards surged. Silvermane wolves hesitated, then froze under a dozen hostile spears. Conclave law! Luna shouted over the chaos. Blood still streaked her neck. Open Alpha duel, here. Now. The Ashmarsh matriarch lifted her spear and thundered, Granted! Hadrian spat blood and laughed despite the chain. He can't duel while disguised as a grunt. Raven released him and stood, chest heaving. With deliberate calm, he tore off the plain soldier's coat and dropped it in the mud. Underneath, at his shoulder, burned the royal sigil branded in old Rite fire. The wolf wreathed in flame. Gasps tore through the circle. Raven Wildfire looked at the gathered alphas and said, I am done hiding. They cleared the ring. Hadrian fought like he ruled. Beautiful, vicious, willing to maim first. Raven fought like storm and stone. Claw met claw. Bone cracked. Hadrian slashed Raven's side open. Raven answered with a shoulder throw that dented the flagstones. On the fourth exchange, Raven caught Hadrian mid-lunge, drove a fist into his sternum, and pinned him face down with a knee between the shoulders. He could have snapped the neck. Luna stepped into the edge of the ring, voice carrying. Hold. Raven froze, breathing hard, hands still locked in killing position. By conclave witness, Luna said, I refuse blood execution, strip title, brand oathbreaker, sentence labor reparations under guard in every village he burned. Shock rippled again. Then, from one side, the Ashmarsh matriarch nodded. Law allows. Greyfen Alpha added, seconded. One by one, seconded. Seconded. Hadrian thrashed under Raven's grip, spitting mud. You sanctimonious. Guards hauled him upright and forced him to the branding post at the circle's edge. For once, no one objected to a hot iron. When the Oathbreaker sigil seared into his throat, his scream echoed off the keep walls. As they dragged him past Luna in chains, he twisted enough to spit at her boots. You'll regret mercy. Luna met his hatred without blinking. No, you will live long enough to understand it. They pulled him into the dark toward an iron transport cage, silver braids dragging in the mud. Behind them, High Elder Marin was stripped of staff and seals on the same stones where he had branded her. Torin tried to flee and was tackled by his own cousins. Kesh, shaking, testified to Hadrian's orders in exchange for labor service instead of hanging. Vexa was dragged from Silvermane camp with ink-stained fingers and a satchel of forged seals. By dawn, the lies had names. 13 nights later, wolves from 9 packs stood beneath Darkhollow's rebuilt moon arch. Masons had reset the cracked stones. Fresh mortar still smelled sharp in the cold air. Lanterns hung from the arch ribs like captured stars. No throne, no raised dais, just a wide circle of packed earth and witness. Luna wore dark leathers instead of ceremonial silk. Exile brand uncovered at her throat like a scar-turned banner. Raven stood opposite in formal black, with the royal mantle clasped at one shoulder, scar bright in moonlight. The crowd hushed as the Ashmarsh matriarch called, "Bond right by mutual claim, free of coercion, witnessed by conclave." Raven stepped forward one pace. "Luna Darkhollow," he said, using her full name so the stones carried it. "I ask in front of every pack and every law we just rewrote. Do you choose me with no command from rank, no compulsion from bond, and full right to refuse?" The old fear flickered. Fire, rejection, veil burning. Luna felt it, then felt the new thing under it. Her own spine, straight and unborrowed. "Yes," she said. "I choose you." Raven's shoulders loosened on a breath he seemed to have held for weeks. "Then I choose you. Freely. Entirely." She closed the distance first. When she reached him, she turned and bared the junction of neck and shoulder, pulse loud beneath skin, a deliberate offering. Her wolf lifted, calm and fierce. Raven's hand came to her waist, steadying, not taking. "Tell me now if you want me to stop." "Don't stop," she whispered. He lowered his head and set his mouth to her skin for one suspended heartbeat. Warm breath, rough stubble, the edge of canines, then bit. Pain flashed bright and clean, not like branding fire, not like punishment. This was a strike that opened and then poured heat through the wound, fierce and stabilizing. It shot down her spine, through her chest, into the place her wolf had slept half-starved for years. She gasped and clutched his shoulders, nails digging through cloth. The bond surged. Memory and sensation flooded both ways in a dizzying torrent. His first sight of her in rain by the border scrub, her nightmare in the tower, his terror at the well mouth when she vanished underwater, her hunger the day of exile, his grief from villages he could not save, her stubborn laughter in mud, his hand warming her boots by emberlight. Not possession, recognition. Raven drew back slowly, lips blood-bright, eyes incandescent gold. His forehead dropped to hers. "Mine," he breathed, voice wrecked. Luna was already moving. She grabbed the back of his neck, pulled him down, and turned her head to the heartline under his collarbone where pulse hammered hard. "Yours," she answered. Then she bit. His body jerked under her hands, a rough sound breaking from him that was half growl, half prayer. She felt his blood, hot and salt metal, then the answering wave. Pleasure threaded through pain, deep and electric, reverberating through muscle and marrow until her knees threatened to buckle. He held her tighter, not restraining, holding because she was shaking too. "Mate," he whispered against her hair. "Mate," she echoed, and the word landed like a lock turning home. The completed bond snapped into alignment with a palpable pulse that rippled outward. Several wolves in the front rank shivered at the energy of it. Lantern flames bent, then steadied. Inside Luna, the constant raw ache around the exile brand eased for the first time since the iron touched her skin. Not erased, integrated. Hers. Raven kissed the marked spot gently, reverent. Luna did the same over his heartline. At the same time, without planning it, they spoke into the space between their mouths. No more cages, only chosen home. The crowd exhaled as one. Then came the sound, howls rising from every pack, layered and fierce, not war call, but witness. Raven wrapped his cloak around both of them against the night chill. Luna tucked herself into him, forehead to throat, feeling the bond settle from wildfire to banked heat, constant and sure. For a long moment, neither moved. Morning broke clear on the day of the memory accords. The conclave table had been hauled into the open at the shrine center where anyone could watch. Instead of one high elder seat, there were equal benches. Instead of hidden ballots, every vote was spoken and recorded in fresh-cut oak tablets by 3 scribes from different packs. Luna stood with one hand on the first carved tablet while Raven stood at her side, not in front. Article 1, Luna read, voice ringing against stone. All border disputes and war claims within the reforged territories will be judged by land memory right, witnessed by neutral packs. She looked up. No more verdicts built on forged ink. Murmurs of assent. Article 2. Reparations are owed by warlords and councils proven to have profited from false flag raids, including all seized Silvermane holdings. Before the next article, a Greyfen scribe raised the recovery roll and read every name from the missing North convoy. Each abducted pup had been found in Silvermane transit dens and returned to living kin. Dark Hollow mothers stood in witness with their children at their sides, answering one by one as the roll was marked. The Accords entered the abduction charges against Luna and the Crown as false by unanimous acknowledgement. At that, guards marched Hadrian into view in shackles and work leathers, Oathbreaker brand stark on his throat. He carried a mason's hammer. No silver rings, no braids. He was set to labor under armed escort on the same wall his raids had toppled. He met Luna's gaze once, hatred banked to coals. She gave him none of hers back. Article 3, she said, and her voice softened without losing edge. Permanent banishment is abolished. The words moved through the crowd like wind. Torin, wrists manacled, stood with a labor crew by the supply carts. His air braid had been cut. Marin shoveled gravel beside him under guard, elder robes replaced by plain wool. Kesh stood in the same line, face stripped of swagger, waiting for assignment to bridge crews he had once tried to sabotage. Luna continued. Exile will be time-limited, reviewable, and never used to strip bodily autonomy. Any wolf cast out may petition sanctuary under pack asylum law. She set down the tablet and faced the witnesses. First petition is granted now. A thin woman with an old exile scar, 60 if a day, stepped forward from Ashmarsh ranks, shaking. Luna walked down from the table and placed a carved den token in her hands. Welcome home, Tira Reed, Luna said. The woman broke into sobs. Around them, even hard-faced warriors looked away to hide wet eyes. The final vote was unanimous. The Ashmarsh matriarch lifted Luna's wrist and declared, by accord and witness, Luna Darkhollow is named Sovereign Luna of the Reforged Territories, co-ruler by autonomous authority over exile law, consent law, and asylum law. Raven bowed to her first, in full view of every banner, not as performance, as promise. When the sun dipped, every pack gathered at the old ruins center where the first new den frame stood, fresh pine beams over stones once blackened by war. Wolves passed timbers hand to hand regardless of colors, then fixed them in place together, while children painted moon and flame sigils on the lintel. Luna and Raven set the threshold stones side by side. Ready? Raven asked quietly. Luna looked at the crowd, not fearful, not kneeling, working and laughing and arguing over beam angles like a real future had weight. Ready, she said. They stepped across the threshold together into the scent of raw wood, clean mortar, and home being built on purpose. Outside, the howls that rose were not for a king who conquered. They were for a queen who had been broken, chosen, and rebuilt the world anyway.